morning or good day, colleagues, and welcome to yet another presentation of for the Mother Tongue Literacy and Development for both Diploma in Pre-Primary and Junior Primary Education. It's a privilege to share this presentation with you. It's very important to note that Namibia is a multicultural country, and the fact that we are not going to run away from teaching English as mother tongue to our pre and junior primary school phases. Today I am going to touch on a few things. First of all, I just want to emphasize the fact that since these two subjects have been merged, that you write the same examination, it's very important that you get hold of the two study guides. That is the DJP Mother Tongue English 3 and the DPP Mother Tongue English 3 study guide. It's also very important that when you study, you also take note of the keywords in the topics that you study, so that even if you encounter the same keywords in exams, it's easier for you to relate what you have studied to what is being asked. Remind yourself the meanings of question verbs. They are captured in your study guides. Question verbs such as discuss, evaluate, explain, critically discuss. It's very important that when you are asked questions to this or using these question verbs, you can actually give information as required. The topics that are going to be covered, the first one is selecting books for pre-primary and junior primary learners. It's very important that to note that these children are only beginning to read. So the way we introduce them to reading should be able to make them, want to read. It should make them find reading meaningful. So when we select books for them, we should bear in mind the following. We should have a criteria. We don't just select or pick any book that we come across. But if we come across a book, let's ask ourselves the following questions so that we know whether it is a book that is appropriate for our children. Let's not go around and ask people, is this a good book for the children? But we can have our own criteria that we can use to evaluate whether a book is indeed the right book for the children. The first question that you can ask yourself is, are the books you are choosing going to provide enjoyment? Can the children enjoy it? Does it portray a positive experience for them? Does it teach them something along the way? So there has to be something that they learn, and that thing that they learn from it should be positive, and it should be something that the children really enjoy. Will it get them asking appropriate questions? Questions about life, questions about the motives of the characters in it. So all those questions are very important, because in the end, if it teaches them something positive, they have to ask, appropriate questions, and they arrive at answers that are positive, that have a positive impact in their lives. Will you be able to draw from it or transition into other activities if that is a goal? For example, if you want a role play, you want to teach them how to role play, can you use a book as a stepping stone to the activity that is called role play? If there is a worksheet of questions that are set, can you use this reading experience to lead them into answering those questions? Then, does the book contain large, simple pictures free of distraction? There are times when you have a book that has, little pictures here and there, and the children may not be able to follow. But if they are large and they illustrate the point of the book, it is something that you must also consider, because if you have too many details, the children may get confused. Are the pages easy to turn? You have kids as young as those that are under 6 years at pre-primary. Can they be able to turn those pages? Are they thick enough to be able to be turned by a youngster? Is the text written in a fast-moving plot with a positive closing? Does it take long to finish? The more it takes long, the more bored they become. So it is important that you choose one book that has a fast moving plot, that is easy, or that is that finishes quickly. All right, but also they would love to see that when it finishes, positive things happen. You know, you don't want to have a book where everybody dies in the end. So what is the point for the children to read? They're still young, they're looking for life. So give them that, you know, positivity in the endings of the books that they read. Will an adult enjoy reading the book? You are, of course, at times going to read for them. How often or how many times will you read this book if you don't enjoy it? So you should enjoy reading it so that you can actually, read it for them over and over. Then the other thing is that, does the book help learners think about good values? You know, good values, hard work, honesty, trustworthiness, you know, all these values. Remember that stories always have a lesson that children must learn. It should be easy to recognize it. They are still children, so these lessons that you want, or these values that you want them to think about or learn from the book, they should be on the surface. All right, they shouldn't be so much, you know, hidden that they cannot find them. Is the book free of bias, including age, gender, and race? We're living in a world where we are becoming multicultural, multiracial, and so on. How do the characters in the book interact with each other? Do they show some kind of discrimination in terms of age, gender, race? You know, so choose those books that, you know, are embracing of all these different, you know, sectors of society. What is the repetitive quality of the book? How many times are you going to read it to them and they still enjoy it, right? Funny characters, for example, rhyming words, you know, dialogue in it, the way you read it. You know, sometimes it can be read in such a way that every time you read, it brings in a new dimension. Does the language contain rhyming words, funny characters, an interesting plot, a surprise or predictable closing? All right. So all these elements make the book enjoyable. It makes it easy to repeat reading. It makes it, you know, fun to read. So there should be characters that they laugh at. There should be rhyming words that are interesting to string together. There should be an interesting plot. It could be a surprising one, or it could be a predictable one. So when we choose books, let's look at these, you know, criteria. Let's look at these questions and see if we can even have, you know, a grade where we tick. Does it meet this requirement? Does it meet that requirement? And we tick and see, this is the best book that I'm looking for my children. You can even think about the books that you read that you enjoyed as well when you were in pre-primary. Then it goes on to okay, this seems to be repeated. All right, then the teaching methods of reading. One teaching method of reading that we want to isolate today is the look and say method. Look and say method, like it, you know, the name says it all. You look at something and say it. All right, so these are in terms of words and pictures. This method, emphasize that the children learn to read whole words, not just sounds, whole words and short sentences. All right. Now, they read words after the teacher, not the type of read words after the teacher. They use pictures together with the words. So if words are displayed on the board or on a flashcard, the teacher will read that word and the children will, also read after the teacher. So this is how they learn how to read. But then it goes further to integrate pictures in the reading. So if you've got a picture of the cat that is jumping and it says the cat jumps, then obviously by associating the picture with the words, the learners will be aided in reading. Otherwise, if there are no pictures, then they will just take wild guesses. They don't have a criteria. They don't have, for example, the methods such as phonics, that they know the sound of the letters that they see. So of course they are just going to guess. So this kind of reading or method of teaching reading is not very effective if it is used alone, because then your children will just guess and they become poorer readers. Although you make use of flashcards, you don't have the advantage of using the phonics methods. Therefore, because they will just hear you read the word, they will have to memorize it. So it encourages learning reading by rote. Okay? So in order for you to get good results from this method, you need to combine it with other methods such as phonics, and others. Now, we have spoken about reading, we've spoken about choosing books, but I also want us to look at children's literature. Children's literature. When we choose books that the children are going to read, we are also in the area of children's literature. What is children's literature? Children's literature is a tool used to teach children about the world, themselves, and others. Whatever is written is always about the world. It's always about others. It's always about ourselves. So what we do is that we relate to what is written in literature. Children's literature may include the following. For the younger ones, it's picture books. Those that have, began to get, access into the world of fantasy. It can be about fantasy. It can be about traditional literature, traditional folklore stories. It can be poetry. It can be biography, and many others. Now, why is children's literature important? Children's literature is important because it provides learners with opportunities to respond to literature. For example, it gives them that opportunity to relate to a character in a book. It gives them the opportunity to identify the motives of a character, to identify relationships between characters. It gives them that opportunity to get a moral from a story, right? It teaches them to appreciate about their own cultural heritage as well as of others, right? A story could be about, people from different backgrounds, one that they could relate to, or it could be from somebody from a different background, one that they can compare to their own and still appreciate that person, that character in the book, and also appreciate their own. If it's about a folklore, traditional literature, they learn about their own culture. They learn about their own, values in their own cultures. It helps them develop emotional intelligence and creativity. Emotional intelligence, that empathy, that means, compassion, feeling for the other, finding motives in the actions of the other person. And then creativity, they can also start learning how to tell their own story, how to organize these stories, and what makes a story tick. So in the end, they can also tell stories. It nurtures growth and development of learners' personality and social skills, interaction with the characters in the book, finding motives of the characters' actions, learning something from it that make them grow as individuals, and because they are exposed to how people interact in stories, they can also grow socially. It transmits important literature and themes from one generation to the other. All right, themes such as honesty, themes such as jealousy, vice, all those that are punishable and the ones that are rewarded, these are, are transmitted from one generation to another, and we, want to carry them on. So if our children learn about them today, they can also pass it on to the next generation. So that is why literature is important. Then we also would love to talk about summarizing. Summarizing is also very important, because that is when they read or when they listen, children must be able to extract important information from the text, from the talk that they listen to. All right? Now, what is a good summary? What is it that a summary should have in order for it to be deemed a good summary? All right? This is very important even for us as teachers. When we teach or when we ask our children to summarize, we can use this as a yardstick to say, well, your summary has this, your summary has that, but it doesn't have this. So we go back and reinforce that. Now, a good summary should have the title, the author, the type of text, and the central concept at the beginning. It should be organized in a valid, progressive manner. It should exclude any personal interpretation and evaluation. It's not, we don't bring anything into the summary. We rather extract important points from the author's ideas. It should be written in the present tense or historical present tense. Obviously, it should be shorter than the original, and it should include all important conclusions in the text. Now, how do you write a good summary? What are the tips? What can you advise your child or your children in class as to how they can go about writing a good summary? They know the content that should go in there, but how do they do it? The first thing that you need to encourage them is that they should go over the content, understand and determine the main idea. So it's very important that first of all you read, understand, and then you get the main idea. Repeat the procedure. Then you write down or highlight relevant points, right? Include the outline you have written, main idea, and all supporting data. In writing the summary, lay down the main concept, then give supporting statements. The main idea, then the supporting statements. Sentences and even clauses from the paragraphs can be used to answer your questions. So you can actually lift sentences and clauses. If you need to clarify a meaning of a word, use that specific word and nothing else, and the right spelling. All right, the word that you think needs to be explained, just use that one and make sure that you spell it correctly. Note that the summary must contain only the author's views. We've said that in what a good summary is. Revise and edit your work. Revising means you read and see if you have spelled all the words correctly. You read and see if you have answered the question. If the question is just about summarize the main points, have you left out any main points, or have you included everything that is needed? If it just isolates a certain part or section of the text, have you answered the question? All right. So the next one is reading. Reading fluency. We all aspire that we one day become fluent readers. So do our children. And mostly, some of the reasons why people avoid things like reading is because they can't do it better. Maybe they cannot do it better because the first time they were exposed to it, they were not exposed to it well. Right? So it is important for us as teachers to understand oral reading fluency, and then why oral reading fluency is important. Let's ask ourselves the question, what is oral reading fluency? Oral reading fluency is the ability to read a text with accuracy, appropriate rate, and with good expression. Right? There are many moods that we derive, or tone of voice that we derive from the text. If a text is discussing serious issues such as illnesses and diseases, we need to read it with the appropriate expression. If it's about something enjoyable, we should read it with the appropriate expression. You can't be sad and, reading a piece about a celebration of something. Oral reading fluency can be assessed by using words correct per minute. Words correct per minute is actually another topic for another day. Why is oral reading fluency important? Relationship between ability of learners to read grade level text orally and text comprehension. That means that if children can read with fluency, that means the likelihood that they also understand what they are reading is very high. Then we're going to look at the reader theater. Again, still on reading. What is the reader theater? A reader's theater is when learners perform by reading scripts created from grade level books or stories. That is an interesting activity on reading that you can do in class. You have them read, but perform. It increases learners' reading rate by combining reading practice and performing. Its goal is to enhance learners' reading skills and confidence by having them practice reading with a purpose. Readers' theaters give learners a real reason to read aloud because they are performing, so they can read aloud so that what they are saying is heard. Readers' theater motivates reluctant readers and provides the opportunity for fluent readers to explore genre and characterization. Those that are reluctant, those that are shy to read, may be motivated by readers' theater. Those that are strong readers, they may have an opportunity to explore the type of text they're reading and characterization. For example, if it's a female character, they use a female voice. If it's a male character, they use a deep voice. So it's very important to try these in our class. Once we have those that can, have mastered reading a text, we make them perform so that others also look forward to say, I also want to be there in front performing one day. How do we improve oral reading fluency? By modeling. Reading to learners allows them to hear the sound, rhythm, and phrasing of language. So we should be able to provide that model as teachers. We read to them and they should emulate or aspire to read like we do. The other thing is that we need to develop their vocabulary. Since fluency depends upon the reader's ability to quickly recognize and decode words on sight, having a solid vocabulary foundation and a bank of sight words to draw upon is key. They cannot be fluent readers if they do not know words. So expose them to as many words as possible. Choral reading is also another way of improving reading fluency. Reading along out loud with a learner and following along in a text together allows teachers to help learners experience hearing and sounding out words at the same time. So you and your class read together at once. Those that are struggling with words, they can pick how to pronounce those words along the way. Silent sustained reading. Through SSR, learners get the freedom to develop their own taste for reading, so they can choose what they want to read. unfettered by the pressures and anxieties of reading aloud. So nobody's listening to them. They can do it silently. SSR both increases motivation and ability to focus. So they read on their own. They are motivated to read, but also they know that they've got to read, so they will focus on the text. Guided oral reading. Oral reading by a learner with guidance and feedback from a patient coach allows learners to apply and build their phonics skills to sound out words and helps them crack the alphabetic code. Repetitive oral reading helps these learners increase their familiarity with vocabulary and pronunciation while increasing reading fluency. The connection between reading fluency and comprehension is strong, in part because it facilitates the efficient use of language working memory. So it's very important that we do fluent reading so that our children can, comprehend what they read. Once the more fluent they are, the more they can comprehend the text. Then we have abilities. Neuro-developmental abilities are problems that may affect children's writing. Whenever the children have problems in writing, we need to identify the type of problem that they have so that we can map out the appropriate solution to it. These are the common problems that children may have. One is attention problem. That is when they cannot, attend in class. They cannot just be attentive. They can't listen. Spatial ordering problem. That is the order of words, leaving spaces in between. Sequential ordering problem. Memory problem, they can't remember. Language, they've got problems with language. Higher order cognition problems. Graphomotor problem. These are all problems that we can, look at. But I would love students also to read the problems that are associated with each one of them and how to deal with each one of these problems. It's very important that we just don't know the problems, but we know the symptoms, how to identify a child that has an attention problem, and the remedies that we can use in our classrooms to correct the situation. Then, ways to improve learners' writing. When our learners write, it's not that we just take their work and grade them, but we need to give them positive feedback. Positive feedback from which they can learn. When reviewing your learners' essays, give positive feedback along with talking about what needs improvement. So you need to tell them, this is where you've gone wrong and this is how you can improve your essay. Engage your learners in the revision process by discussing the mechanics of writing without disapproval of their ideas. What is important here is that the ideas that are written in children's essays should be their ideas. But what you should help them is how to, put those ideas on paper, how to structure them. Incorporate writing into fun activities. There are lots of ways to bring writing into daily life. Let them write about, their favorite experience. Let them write about their family. Let them write about a friend. Ask your learners to help you make a list and record messages. The next point is that don't rush writing. Don't force them to just write and finish. Make sure your learners have a quiet place to write and help them gauge how long it would take to complete a writing assignment. Instead of rushing them, give them ample time because they need to learn a skill. And once they've learned it, then you can work on the speed. Get extra help. Recognize when extra help is needed. Often learners respond well to having a personal writing tutor. So if they are deeply entrenched problems, then you need to get help, that you get somebody that focuses on the child specifically. Then the other thing that is very important is the dominant hand. We grow up, knowing that there are things that you are not allowed to do with your left hand. You have to strengthen your right hand all the time and use your right hand all the time. However, biologically, one can also have a stronger left hand and a weaker right hand. So that person will tend to do everything with their left hand, including writing. All right. So we are not going to force children to write with the right hand, but we are going to identify which one of their hands is the dominant one. And then we are going to insist that they learn how to hold a pencil and how to write with the dominant hand. But how do we know that this is a dominant hand? There are activities that we can use. If we're not sure, we can do the following activities with the child in question. We can ask them to catch the ball with one hand. We throw the ball at them and they should catch it with one hand. You'll see the one that the child wants to catch with is obviously the dominant hand. Ask them to roll a ball. They are going to roll it with the dominant hand. Throw a ball, a beanie, or a beanie bag. Obviously, they are going to use the dominant hand to throw. Unscrew a bottle, and string beads or macaroni. So all these are going to help us identify which one is the dominant hand, and we start working with the dominant hand instead of forcing the child to work with the right hand, even if it's not the dominant hand. Pencil grip. Many children struggle with how to hold a pencil. There is a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of pressure to write. They see others producing beautiful handwriting and so on. Everybody wants to write, beautifully. So, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot. I remember many of us at primary school, we were not even taught how to hold it. So we just had to do, and mostly produce very bad handwritings. Now, how can you help your child have a better pencil grip? Place color markers on the shaft of the pencil to show where to place the thumb and the index finger. You have a different color, you say this is where your thumb must go. A different color, this is where your index finger should go. Explain why it's important to change their pencil grip to improve the quality and quantity of writing. Right? Quality and quantity, that they can be flexible enough to write more words in a given time, and that their handwriting is beautiful. Focus on one point at a time, e.g. keeping the little finger and the ring finger gently curled in, then the thumb position and index finger, and finally the middle finger. So you take them step by step. This is how your small finger and your ring finger are going to be. This is where your thumb should be, and this is where your index finger is going to be. So it takes time and patience to do that. Try using a triangular shaped pencil, especially good for those just learning how to write. Molded pencil grip aids can help improve the handwriting and building confidence for some learners. So, and also coordination, fingers and hand strength are key important strength in being able to hold a pencil correctly. So the strength of the hand and the fingers should also be emphasized. Then we are going to look at assessment. Mainly the assessment methods. There are two different types of assessment methods. These are informal and formal assessment methods. Informal assessment methods are mainly done through observation during the learning situation. So you have your learners participating in a classroom situation. You assess how they interact with others. You assess how they participate in the classroom situation. You know, all these things, small things around them that actually facilitate learning. And then in formal assessment methods, you set assessment tasks or situations such as tests, worksheets, assignments, maybe role play, and so on. So these the formal ones are set. You can mark, use a criteria to mark and say this is how much you got. But informal is mainly by observation, by looking at how they do things, how they play with others, how they interact, you know, their social skills mainly. So that is basically the end of this presentation. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.